Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Espresso Chat, where we break down the topics shaping the life sciences industry today. I'm your host, Casey Chestnut, and I'm joined again by Director of Client Solutions at STAEDEAN, Massimo Crudeli. Hi, Massimo. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Casey. Nice to see you again, and this time a greeting from Amsterdam.
It's nice to have you on home turf.
Yes, on your side of the pond.
Yes. So Massimo, today we're talking about inspection-ready data and how regulatory expectations around data integrity, traceability, digital visibility continue to evolve across the life sciences industry. While inspections were once something organizations prepared for periodically, regulators now increasingly expect companies to maintain inspection-ready operations every day. That shift is creating new pressure around disconnected systems, spreadsheets, remote inspections, and data governance. So today, we'll explore what regulators are really looking for, the most common gaps organizations still face, and what it takes to become inspection-ready by design. Let's get into it.
Yep.
So my first question for you, why are regulators now focusing so heavily on inspection-ready data, not just during audits, but every day?
I guess there have been a fundamental shift from validation being episodic, to a continuous assurance. So historically, inspections were point-in-time events, where organizations where they prepared for months, they put together documentation, they demonstrated compliance, but all retrospective. Now, this no longer reflects the reality of modern, globalized life sciences organizations. So today, regulators, they expect data integrity, traceability, and control embedded in daily operations, not reconstructed after the fact. So this is because there are two forces, I guess, at play. One is growing complexity of modern supply chains, where single production might touch multiple manufacturers, and then you have laboratory operations, so you have logistics providers. And then another reason is that there is an increasing digitalization of processes. And that creates, from a regulator standpoint, opportunity and risks. So if data is not generated on time, that could be an issue, okay? And on the contrary, if data is generated on time, it must also be verifiable in real time. So at this point, inspection become real-time inspections. It's not being prepared about the event. It's about providing that processes are continuously monitored and controlled. It's not, the question for regulator is not, can you show me, but can you prove that is always true in real time? So that's a big change, of course, from a regulatory standpoint, but also for life science organizations, for the leadership teams. Its compliance is no longer a periodic exercise. It's an operational capability that must be designed into the business.
I like it. Yeah, very interesting. My second question is, what are the most common data integrity gaps regulators are finding during inspections today?
Based on my experience and talking to different life sciences organizations, now regulators are not looking for isolated failures, because today what they are experiencing and what they are witnessing are systemic weaknesses in how the data is generated or handled or governed. So I would say that is one of the common causes, I would say, is fragmentation of systems. Data is spread across multiple systems. So you have spreadsheets, you have paper records even. So that, from a regulatory standpoint, making very difficult to establish a complete traceable history of the data. And that leads to inconsistencies between different systems, reports, And that is a big red flag from a regulatory standpoint. Another common issue is the lack of contemporaneity. So data is not recorded in real time or time of the activity. The registration record is delayed entries, manual backfilling, or undocumented corrections. These practices really undermine trust in the data, in the system. Okay, and then I've seen audit trail deficiencies as a recurring theme. The regulator, they expect full visibility into who changed what, when, and why. If your system is not robust enough to track these elements, well, that is a signal of lack of control and lack of trust in system and data. And maybe if you want to add, of course, there is always the uncontrolled manual intervention. Spreadsheet, offline adjustment, maybe based on email. So that is, it introduces ambiguity and risk in the process, especially if this process happen outside the validated environment. So the gaps per se are, or they seem manageable, but collectively, they point to a deeper issue. I think we discussed this one in one of the previous webinars when we talked about data integration and the compliance. You cannot, rely on human discipline and processes and procedure rather than a system to ensure control.
Yeah. How have remote inspections changed what organizations need to prove digitally? It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one. For me as well, it's a tricky one. I would say that, remote and hybrid inspections, partially remote and partially on site, they have accelerated the need of digital maturity in a tangible, sensible way. When inspectors are no longer expected on site, physically on site, they expect that your system, the data can be accessed, shared at any point in time. Okay, so back to the first question, is not, an episode. Okay, this is really a continuous validation of the environment, of the system, of the data from a regulator standpoint. Okay, so that changes entirely what means a proof. Not something that you can prepare, or you cannot say, well, the documentation exists somewhere, just give it time to go and retrieve it. It must be, immediately, really accessible, well structured and contextually linked. So they really expect, the regulator, they may expect seamless navigation across data sets. And again, if your system are deeply fragmented, that is not possible. You can trace from, a batch, manufacturing batch to raw material through manufacturing, quality control, release without interruption. So it's a big change. It's a big change in the expectation from our regulators, and a big change from a company standpoint, what it means from, for example, data transparency. You cannot rely anymore on a set of spreadsheets or reports that are filled manually by the user at a point in time. So they really expose this kind of remote inspections, they expose the true state of organization data architecture.
Yeah, interesting. So why do disconnected systems and spreadsheets create such major compliance exposure?
The reason is that they create, disconnected systems create gaps. They create gaps in traceability, the gaps in visibility, gaps in the audit trail. And in a regulated environment, the gaps, are risks. So if your data kind of flows across multiple systems without a structure, at that point you lose, as an organization, the ability to maintain control, to maintain a single source of truth. Each handoff from one system to another, from a system to a user, from a system to a spreadsheet, introduce a potential error, delay, misalignment, and those are risks. And over time, these episodes, they erode confidence in the data, both internally, from a company standpoint, but also from a regulatory perspective. And the spreadsheets, they really amplify the problem without talking about AI. Spreadsheets are flexible, they are familiar, but they are also difficult to control. You cannot really establish easily versioning of Excel file. The point versioning becomes ambiguous, changes are not always traceable, governance of this kind of spreadsheets is informal. How many times, even when you look at your computer, you have 2 or 3 different versions of the same file, which one is the right one? So, and then if you look at the system architecture in the big picture, you might have disconnected environment and system that shift the burden of compliance to individual teams. The teams, maybe the QA team is forced to reconcile data from manufacturing and from inventory. They need to validate accuracy of the data. They ensure consistency, all manual. This approach is risky, number one, but also doesn't scale. And it's not a very good approach for remote visits from regulator. So that's why fragmented systems are an issue from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah. Well, then what practical steps should organizations take today to become inspection ready by design?
Well, I guess becoming inspection ready by design starts with, a simple principle. So compliance must be engineered into the processes and not inspected later. So I guess from a company standpoint, maybe first step would be establishing a unified data foundation, reducing fragmentation as much as possible by consolidating multiple systems and processes, manufacturing, quality, supply chain, finance, ideally onto one integrated platform where data flows seamlessly and consistently. Then maybe the second step at that point would be to design for traceability from the beginning. Which means basically ensuring that each critical transaction is automatically recorded, timestamped, and linked to create this kind of an auditable chain. At that point, that eliminates the need for reconstruction and validation of the data per se. Also, as an organization, you might want to minimize, if not eliminate, manual intervention. Every time manual input is required, that should occur within a controlled, validated environment with full auditability. And if it's possible to eliminate that entirely with modern ERP system, that would be ideal, would be a success. You also, as a company, as an organization, want to think in maybe governance, not as an oversight layer, but really built-in data standards, maybe harmonization of data, validation rules, approval processes that are enforced systematically by the system and not left to interpretation. Now, do I want to submit this onto the workflow? And yes, maybe not. That doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore. And then, of course, once you have all this in place, you can, sprinkle some AI on top of it and leverage intelligent automation to monitor data quality, detect anomalies, and flag potential risk. But that should be built on a solid foundation, not built on chaos. Otherwise, you will have, flags and warnings pretty much everywhere.
Well, thank you, Massimo, once again for joining us and sharing your insights. Always super interesting to have you and hear what you have to say. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode. If you're interested in learning more about inspection-ready operations, data integrity, and FDA compliance, come join us at one of our executive dinners, where we will be diving deeper into this. You can check out the link below to find a dinner near you. In addition, if there's something you want to hear about from our next Espresso Chat, send us a message and we'll try to include it. Until next time, thanks everyone. Thank you, Massimo.
Thank you, Casey. Bye.
Bye.